We live in a world where pretty much anyone can release music online, and listeners like you and I have an endless amount of music we can listen to at any given point. So how do some musicians stand out from the rest? Well, ever since the concept of an album was a thing, some artists have decided to create concept albums, which is an album that centers around a concept. Wow, I just have a way with words. Basically, a concept album is an album whose tracks hold a larger purpose or meaning collectively than they do individually, typically achieved through a single central narrative or theme, which can be instrumental, compositional, or lyrical. Sometimes the theme is applied to albums considered blah blah blah. Okay, basically it's an album that tells a story. Some examples of this would be American Idiot by Green Day and Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. Wow, the two most emo records I could think of. Perfect. Here are some other examples. I'm not too familiar with the rap and hip hop scene, but I'm pretty sure After Hours by The Weeknd is a concept album, and also Astroworld by the guy from Fortnite. Concept albums have been around for a while, and they've become fairly popular in today's music. But what about some bands that take it a step further? What about bands that center their entire musical identity around one story? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hey everyone, my name is Braden with a Y, and today we're going to be talking about bands that tell stories. So today I'm just going to be talking about bands that I'm more familiar with, but if you know of a band that you think would fit in this video that I left out, be sure to write it down in the comments. I would love to make a part 2 video with some suggestions from you guys. So the first band I'm going to be talking about is 21 Pilots, which just so happens to be my favorite band. What are the chances? Can you save my every soul? 21 Pilots has been making music since 2009, but their overarching story didn't start until 2015 with their album Blurry Face, and then continued with Trench and more recently Scaled and Icy. These albums tell the fictional story of lead singer Tyler Joseph's escape from the city of Dima, which is run by evil bishops who worship a false religion called Vialism. Tyler is helped out by the Bandidos, a rebellious group set on freeing the people of Dima. Oh yeah, and the whole group is led by the band's drummer Josh Dunn. Okay, that was a lot of information, so let me break it up into the different albums. Blurry Face kind of acts as the prologue to the story as it introduces the bishops. Blurry Face, aka Nicholas Bourbaki, is the leader of the group. Each of the bishops represent one of Tyler Joseph's insecurities, and 9 of the songs on the album correspond to a bishop. Then we get to Trench, which I consider chapter 1 of the story. Here we learn of the world of Trench, where the city of Dima resides. 3 of the music videos in this album give us a visual representation of the city and its surrounding world. In these music videos, Tyler Joseph is first seen getting captured by Blurry Face, then he gets sent back to Dima, and then finally escapes with the bishops, only for the cycle to repeat itself. The entirety of this story is metaphorical. Dima represents the dark state of mind that we sometimes get caught into, and it's run by our insecurities, and in this story's case, the bishops. The Bandidos, the group that helped Tyler escape from his dark place, represents his friends, family, and fans. Are you still with me? Because don't worry, it gets a lot more complicated. The band's most recent album, Scaled and Icy, shows Tyler being controlled by the bishops in order to create propaganda music advertising for people to come to the city of Dima. Which, I don't know about you, just happens to be one of my favorite vacation destinations. Right up there with Alcatraz, Chernobyl, and my middle school cafeteria. Oh, and Josh Dunn can now breathe fire and turn things into toys? Oh, and there's this gremlin thing that's supposed to represent Tyler's creativity, and he's missing? And there's also this dragon that represents the same thing, but he's not missing. He's just a toy now? Honestly, I'm not very sure. Like I said, it can get very confusing, and the fanbase is always coming up with theories trying to explain everything, and honestly, it's very fun to be a part of. I think that Scaled and Icy is kind of supposed to be the intermission between Trench and the finale of the story, which Tyler Joseph confirmed would be the next album. So, yeah, I think that's everything. How'd I do, Jimmy?
It's an oversimplification of events, but yes.
Yeah, that was really brief, and if you want to know more about the 21 Pilots story, I would recommend watching a video by Polyphonic. It's really well made, and I think it covers pretty much everything. So, now that you're semi-caught up to speed, why does this matter? 21 Pilots may be the most well-known example of a band that tells an overarching story throughout each of their albums. They have created a narrative that engages fans in a story that ties into themes of their music. I briefly mentioned this, but their entire story is a metaphor for mental health, which is a topic that their music dives into as well. It really shows that music can be so much more than just pumping out singles hoping one will chart. Instead, music can be a vessel for storytelling, which can be a lot easier to digest for some than a typical movie or a book. Okay, that got way too deep. Let's talk about some robots and monkeys.
Here we go.
So I won't be talking about the stories as much with these two because honestly I'm not as familiar with them, and I spent a lot of time talking about 21 Pilots. Gorillaz and Daft Punk do something very interesting in the fact that their band members aren't real. Okay, well there are real people behind the band, but they've created characters for the band to appear like they're the ones playing the music. For example, Gorillaz, as the name implies, is a group of Wait, they're humans? Okay, I guess they're just people that look like gorillas? They're cartoons. I'm not calling real people gorillas. That'd be weird. So basically they're virtual band members, and they appear in the music videos, the album covers, and even the concerts. Same thing for Daft Punk, except replace 4 monkeys with 2 robots. But maybe the robots are monkeys. Well, I guess we'll never know. I think this is genius because unique looking characters and iconic robot helmets are a lot more memorable than normal looking people. Also, as far as I can tell, both of these bands seem to have satirical themes against the mainstream music industry, and how bands these days are programmed to be perfect representations of what we consider good musicians. This can be seen in the music videos for Feel Good Inc. by the Gorillaz and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger for Daft Punk. This is a topic that's still very relevant to this day, and both of these bands were started in the 90s. Anyways, I thought these two bands had a really cool premise, and I thought I'd throw them into the video. Gorillaz does have a pretty crazy story that's way too long for me to explain in this video, but I'll link a video by Foundflix in the description that covers the story in much more detail. I'm not sure how much of a story Daft Punk has. As far as I can tell, it's mostly in the music videos, but I'd recommend watching those as well. Now on to the final band, which I saved for last because I think it's a perfect example of a band that tells a story throughout their entire musical identity. And that band is...
Oh my God, they found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
I know what you're thinking, and yes, that's the actual band name, but instead of saying that every time, I'm just going to abbreviate to I Don't Know How. I Don't Know How is a relatively new band. They released their first single in 2017, their first EP in 2018, and finally their first album in 2020. The story of this band is that the band was around in the 80s, but their music is only being discovered now. This is a very interesting concept for an album, let alone a whole band. And what makes this so intriguing is that the whole portrayal of this band online really makes you feel like you're discovering a band from the 80s. It's incredible how immersive it is. At one point I actually wasn't sure if it was really a band from the 80s or not. It's crazy. I remember clicking on the music video for Do It All the Time after the YouTube algorithm had recommended it to me like 10 times, and I couldn't be happier that I decided to give it a watch. The music video shows the two band members in an orange room with computers hooked up to their instruments, and throughout the music video you can see people running tests on the music. I was intrigued and I decided to look through the rest of the channel. The more you watch, the more you realize that there's more to the story. I don't want to say much because I really want people to be able to experience this for themselves. So what I've done is I've created a playlist where you can watch the story so far. I've only included the music videos, but I would also recommend listening to the songs that don't have music videos because they're really good. If you want to have this experience for yourself, go watch the playlist. It's not very long since they're a pretty new band. But after that, come back to this video if you want to hear what I have to say. Okay, I'll give you a second to click off if you want to. Okay, I'm assuming you're done. So at first, it seems like this is just a normal band from the 80s, appearing on TV shows and local talent shows, but as the videos go on, you realize that the band is actually being run by a company called Telex, who are trying to study the components of music and how they can industrialize it. This seems to be satirizing the music industry and how they use formulas to create their music. This is also very similar to the Gorillaz and Daft Punk storylines. Now that I think about it, it's actually kind of similar to what 21 Pilots is doing with Scaled and Icy. So yeah, I Don't Know How But They Found Me is a really underrated band, and I think if you made it this far in the video, you should go check them out. If you like music like 21 Pilots and Panic at the Disco, or music from the 80s, I think you'll really like them. And they have a really fascinating story to go along with the music. So what did we learn? Well, there's a lot of good music out there, but I don't think there's enough music that tells stories. And I think bands who are trying to take their music to the next level should take notes from these guys. In conclusion, music doesn't just have to be something that fills the silence of our daily lives. It can also be something that's used to tell stories that will stick with us forever.